So today I had a lovely chat with Helen Kemp all about her experience living with endometriosis, having autism and going through a surgical menopause. So here she is chatting to me about her experiences. Thank you so much for joining me and giving up some of your time to have a chat and raise awareness for endometriosis as well. So can you take me back to when you first started experiencing symptoms and kind of your journey to diagnosis?
In one sense, it was quite long, and in the other sense, it was relatively short. I was eventually diagnosed at the age of 38, but I'd always had extremely heavy painful periods and the whole debilitating issues, backache, pains down my legs, pelvic pain, would bleed for weeks on end. That had always been my profile, if you like, of my menstrual history.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that was my normal. I didn't have anything to compare it against. And eventually, when I got up to the age of 38, and everything just really came to a head because I have fibroids as well. And obviously, they started to get larger, and the cysts on my ovaries started to become a problem. And I eventually had a laparoscopic investigation, which found endometriosis, and that led on to a hysterectomy and removal of both my ovaries at the age of 41. So, in one sense, I lived with it without realising that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's. I suppose I would call it a challenging journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And had you heard of endometriosis at all before you were diagnosed, before you had the laparoscopic procedure?
I was aware of it, but I didn't realise quite how it presented because, as I say, trying to compare one person's pain to another is slightly difficult. And periods, for me, weren't spoken about anyway. So I had no comparison. But no, it was never spoken about before that, and certainly leading up to having the laparoscopic surgery, I'd said to one of my healthcare team that I wondered if I had endometriosis, and they were just very dismissive and said, no, you don't get to the age of 38 and present with it. It would have been a problem before then. So,
right, okay.
Confusing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of times it's on the opposite when it's younger, teenagers, 13, 14-year-olds, and people are saying, oh, you're not old enough to have. So that's interesting that, you're told at the age of 38 as well, oh no, it can't be that as well.
It's weird, I think, but also, and this is where because I'm autistic, and I think this is where my autism feeds in, because I have sensory processing issues as well as alexithymia, which means I have an issue or I have a problem identifying feelings and emotions, and the sensory processing issues mean that I have a high pain tolerance. So I can see how it would easily have been missed. And I think for some reason it just, whether it's a female issue, but I think we tend to get quite easily dismissed, and perhaps the responsibility was entirely mine because I have become better at advocating for myself. But I think it can be very, very difficult to do that, especially when you're in pain, and perhaps you think you're not being taken seriously. I think it can be very frustrating. It's not easy on the GPs and the medics who work with us. I think it would be unfair to just give them a hard time. I think it's very, very difficult all around.
Yeah, it is. And it's a very important thing that you've just brought up there as well, is that from both sides, it's very difficult being a person who's presenting with a lot of pain and not knowing what's going on for them. And with endometriosis as well, as we know, there's so many symptoms related to how we're feeling as well. So it can be confused as so many different things as well.
I only received my autism diagnosis when I was 46.
Okay.
So all of my if you like, all of my gynae issues and issues with my mental and emotional health, they all just seem to be, sort of channeling towards, in essence, menopause. And that's really when everything came to a head. So I mean, it's hard to say whether autism played a part in as much as it was difficult for me to get help. I think that's a difficult one to answer.
And in terms of going back to your diagnosis and then having to have a hysterectomy at a young age as well, were there other kind of options presented for you at the time, or what were your kind of feelings when that was kind of put on the table to say, okay, we think this could be the route to go down to relieve some of your symptoms and the pain?
I was offered the full spectrum of treatments, if you like, from, in essence, nothing, just carry on the way you are, from chemical treatments to literally if you like, the nuclear option, which was surgery. And I'd never wanted children, so that wasn't an issue for me. And given that I had all the other gynae issues as well, I had the fibroids, which were only getting larger, and I had cysts on my ovaries, so that it wasn't just the endometriosis. And I thought, well, let's just go in hard and heavy, and rather than perhaps have 3 or 4 surgeries over the space of 5 years and not be able to get on with my life, let's just go nuclear. But I was offered the whole raft of options.
And it sounds like there was a lot going on there. Not just endometriosis, a lot going on there, causing pain. As you're saying, it's such an important thing to pass down. You've turned what's been a really bad experience and turned it around and been like, okay, I'm going to do something positive out of this, and be able to share what I've found as well. So I love that you've got 12 different chapters as well. I think that's really clever. Are the 12 different women, have they all had kind of a surgical menopause, or has it been a mixture of kind of natural menopause as well, or what's their kind of backgrounds?
Each of us have had a surgical menopause.
Okay.
The reasons for them and the particular types of surgery we had were all slightly different. There are some women who have breast cancer. There's one lady who had uterine cancer, and then we've got a couple of women with PMDD. So they went through the surgery as, if you like, an ultimate treatment solution for that. And then you have those who, one lady had just severe pain, and she couldn't figure out a reason, and they couldn't figure out why. She was just in extreme amount of pain, so she had a hysterectomy. But no, that every woman has had surgical menopause, because it's different. It's I always say it's subtly different. It's no worse and it's no better than a natural menopause or a chemical menopause. But it's forewarned is forearmed, and I think it's letting women know perhaps what to expect, rather than the narrative that we get told that you'll probably take about 6 to 8 weeks and then you'll be back to yourself again. And it's just not that case. And I think if we have a more realistic outlook, then I think it can help in our recovery.
So can you talk me through a wee bit of the symptoms that you're saying? It's not just 6 to 8 weeks, maybe back to normal. What kind of symptoms for yourself have you kind of experienced after going through that?
My main issues were psychological and emotional, depression and anxiety, suicidal ideation. I had a recurrence of an eating disorder, which I thought I'd conquered back at university. That became a problem again, and various other issues which I wasn't aware were menopause related. For example, morning sickness. I had nausea. had I not had everything removed, I would have thought I was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So I had morning sickness, joint ache, knuckles, everything became really very stiff, hair loss, vaginal dryness became a problem. So many things, and it becomes like whack-a-mole, because you deal with one symptom,
Mm-hmm.
and then another one pops up.
Yeah, it's like,
And
what next?
it's just a bit confusing, because you don't really know what's going on, and you don't know what's related to the menopause, what's just age, and it becomes you can go downhill, I think, quite quickly, but also it's gradual, so that you don't actually notice it's getting so bad, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, coupled with brain fog and insomnia, it produces another perfect storm, and I think it can just be a really, really turbulent and vulnerable time in a woman's life.
Mm-hmm. Even to have, a couple of those symptoms that you described at the same time is bad enough, but to have all of that in a mix and not really know when things are going to end, or, as you say, is this related to the menopause? Is it something new? Should I worry about this? That's incredibly tough for one person to have to deal with. And do you feel you had a lot of support kind of through that, through like your GP or kind of specialists following on, or?
I would say no. I didn't think there was a great deal of support out there. The support I received was either via there's a great website called Histosisters.
Okay.
And you can track your post-operative period, and you can follow other groups of women as they go through their own post-operative period. And Twitter was one of my main sources of information. Dr. Hannah Short, I followed her, and some really great pointers. And it was actually one of her tweets that tweaked in my brain that my mental health issues in that instance were related to the surgery, because before that I hadn't made the link. And so social media, it gets a lot of bashing, but sometimes it can be really very, very useful for information.
Absolutely, yeah. It's when you have the right, if you follow the right people, you follow the right information, and there's so much I know about the endo community and chronic pain community itself. There's help everywhere you look and everywhere you turn to. If you're following the right people and the right sources of information, everyone seems to just rally around each other, and it's the nicest bunch of people, because it's not until you're speaking with somebody who's been through what you're going through, or can relate to some kind of essence of what you're feeling, and that kind of spark and going, okay, I'm not alone in this, there's someone else, there's a whole bunch of other people who know how I've been feeling at the time. So yeah, absolutely, I would completely agree with you that social media.
It's finding your tribe, because, and then as you say, there's a sense of knowing between all of you. Now that's very powerful. It's very powerful.
Yeah. And the fact that you've been able to go on, connect with other women, and write this book for other people to be able to read, gain information from, and learn from, is just incredible. So your book's out next month, is that right?
It's out on the 8th of April.
8th of April. Mm-hmm.
And we're donating all profits to mental health charities, because I think, it's they need our help more now than ever, I think. So,
That's an incredible thing to do. Incredible.
Thank you.
So it's called Surgical Menopause, Not Your Typical Menopause.
That's correct. It's a catchy title.
No, I like it. And it's going to be on Amazon. Is it just a Kindle book, or will it be in paperback as well? Sorry, I'm doing a bit of a plug for your book. If anyone, I think it's going to be such a great resource after listening to you talk about it. It's going to be a great resource. So if anyone watching this wants to know about it. So yeah, you're saying it's available on Amazon, is that right?
It's available at the moment to pre-order for ebook. It will be coming out in paperback probably at the same time. There's just a bit of the wheels are a bit creaky as regards the paperback, but hopefully they should both be available at the same time. Yeah.
Well, I wish you all the best with that. Really do, really do. So,
Thank you.
my last question for you is looking back on where your journey of where you've been. What would your advice be now to your younger self?
Couple of things. Firstly, I would say be kind and be compassionate to yourself and to others, because I think we're all doing the best we can. I would say periods are not meant to be painful, certainly not to the point that is debilitating. Also, your autism will likely make things harder for you, but you can cope. Track everything. Track absolutely everything, whether that's your physical health, but also mental and emotional well-being, because it's so much easier to get help when you can spot trends. So track everything within an inch of its life. At times, I would say take less shit. Definitely. Never apologise for being too much. And finally, know yourself. Be yourself. And trust yourself, because you are enough.
Honestly, I could listen to you all day giving advice. That is, yep. That is spot on. Yeah, absolutely spot on.